my house.
So, what's good, everyone? Peace. So I've gotten a link to a video in reference to the IRS and how our legislature is attempting to pass a law which will pretty much get rid of the IRS. And so I've gotten a few questions in reference to that. And I have quite a bit of knowledge in reference to the IRS and the Treasury Department. And there's a couple things people need to understand in reference. The IRS is expendable. There's nothing about the IRS that is a governmental entity. The IRS is a subcontractor hired by the Treasury Department. Essentially, I like to refer to the IRS as the go get my money bitch services, right? Because the IRS works on behalf of the Treasury Department. And if you look on the back of your dollar bill or the back of that dollar note, underneath the pyramid, it'll say the Treasury Department. Okay, and then underneath the eagle, it will have the Federal Reserve, which lets you know which is which, or as far as what capacity which entity is operating under. So that should like make a couple of lights go off in your head. And if you're talking about the Treasury Department, you're also talking about that pyramid that's on the backside of that backside of that $1 note. Now, if the Republican Party passes this through legislature, what does that mean for people who have trusts established? What does that mean for people who have EINs and who've been transacting business through the IRS? Well, let your brother explain. It means for people who are set up properly outside of the United States, you're good. All right, because at the end of the day, the IRS works for the Treasury Department. There's nothing that's been put on notice about trying to get rid of the Treasury Department. They're trying to get rid of the subcontractor. So what does that mean? If you get rid of one subcontractor, that means you might bring in another subcontractor. Either way you look at it, you've never not been operating outside of the Treasury Department, which is a legal and lawful governmental agency. That is, the Treasury Department is government. Okay, so whether or not IRS gets shut down, it doesn't disqualify your entity if you already have one established. It doesn't disqualify your trust if you have one established. It doesn't disqualify your businesses if you have one if you already have one established. What that simply does is that, hey, we're no longer going to be contracting through the IRS. So that will just leave us as the people with two options. Either we're going to contract directly with the Treasury Department and the Secretary of the Treasury, which is honestly how we should be operating, or you're going to contract through a new subcontractor that the Treasury Department brings in. Either way, still operating from the Treasury Department. That's not changing. So, as far as I'm concerned, for everyone who does have EINs and stuff like that set up, you're good. You ain't got nothing to worry about because you can operate your trust with or without an EIN. Right? You got to understand how this thing works. If I never got an EIN for any of my entities, I could still function through the Secretary of the State and establish it that way. But once again, getting an EIN is a free service. The Treasury Department doesn't charge, nor does the IRS charge for getting an EIN. Okay? It's a free service. However, there's a lot of information you'll have to go through to understand. And if I were you, I would go get a copy of the IRM, which is the IRS manual, as far as how to function and how to get an EIN and what getting an EIN means and how you're able to move with that in public and in private to secure yourselves and your property for those whom you wish to leave those things behind for, because obviously you can't take it with you. All right. So with that being said, stop panicking, take a deep breath, and relax, because your joint ain't going down with the ship if you're set up properly. And that's all that means. All right. So once again, the IRS is a third party contractor underneath the Treasury Department. So if the IRS goes bye-bye, your trust ain't going nowhere. Your trust is still going to be right there, because the Treasury Department is still going to be right there. And then when you really think about it in retrospect, who's really requiring that you have an EIN? Is it the IRS or is it the Treasury Department? You see what I'm saying? So when you have a knowledge of all these particular things, you get to think a little bit more about what's really happening behind the scenes. And if you don't have the type of knowledge that's being held within these certain particular documents or manuals, you're not going to know anything about anything. You're just going to assume, like everyone else, like, hey, if they get rid of the IRS, that means, oh, well, what about my trust? What about my stuff that's set up? What about my articles of organization? And it's like, you're already set up good. Like, the Treasury Department is the Treasury Department. It ain't going nowhere. The Treasury Department ain't going nowhere. The Secretary of State office ain't going nowhere. The President's office ain't going nowhere. You understand what I'm saying? The Federal Reserve can go bye-bye, though, and government will still be all right. The IRS can go bye-bye, and the government will still be all right. All right? So, just wanted to share that little bit of knowledge with you for those who are showing some concerns. All right? And if you have any more inquiry about how to go about establishing yourself properly and securing your estate and creating a trust, so that way when you transition, you don't have to worry about your property going into probate and your children or loved ones being left with a debt that doesn't belong to them. This country has been bankrupt since 1933, and in that time span has gone through many different shells in between that time and now. So if you don't really know what's going on, you're just going to get caught up in the circle, and you're going to be running around doing the same thing like everyone else is doing, underneath the same pretenses of fear or concern of losing something which you are not in danger of losing at all. So keep that in mind. And if you do have any more inquiries that you need some in-depth consultation on, feel free to reach out to your brother. All right? All the information is in the description. I don't hold no punches. If I don't know something, I'll simply say I don't know. But it ain't nothing for me to go in and figure it out. I'll look it up right after I say I don't know. I'm going to look it up, though, and find out. So that way, when that question ever comes my way again, I don't have to say I don't know. And that's how I've been able to gain as much knowledge as I have today. And trust me, what I know ain't shit compared to the knowledge in its full entirety. So that's why I never walk around with this little air about me like I know everything. I don't know everything, but I do know what the fuck I know. And I share what I know. I never try to beat people over the head with like crazy prices or stuff like that. All I ask is for a donation for my time and my energy. And you can ask anyone who I've worked with. I never try to like I said, clear off people's plate. You know what I'm saying? Everyone goes through their own situation, so I do my best to be as flexible and try to work with people where they're at, right? So, with that being said, let that sit and marinate and stew in your mental, and go from there. Peace, peace.